Okay, doing that. So this is a discussion of what it's going to look like to get into people's homes. And it was identified that until we get IRB, we can't go even into friends' houses. We can only experiment on ourselves. And so given that we want to have more experience with our intervention in the wild, so to speak, first of all, what does it look like to have the whole thing or part of it in your home? And so what would you be committing to? And then secondly, who might be our willing victims among us? And our IRB is closing in, so we should be able to do some experiments soon. But so maybe if I could hear from Christian and Carson on what they think it would look like to have the interface in somebody's home. I can say a little bit about the measurement diagnostic devices in people's homes, and then maybe Paul, Christian, and Jordan on what the interventions themselves, the air filters or the pressurization would look like. What would it look and feel like to have that in your home? So Christian and Carson, can we start with you?
Sure, I can do a first piece and then Carson, if you want to jump in.
And I should have said Erica and Pi will probably be in that too, right? Like, but let's hear from Christian and Carson first and then have Eric and Pi add. Sorry about that.
Sure, yeah. So we've been working with Erica and Pi on some of the dashboarding pieces. I think Carson sent around a set of screenshots for it but that's what we're working with kind of moving forward. Well, we're still certainly open to, I think, additional comments, but I think we're viewing that kind of as the status quo piece, and then we'll revise from there, but we can revise as needed. If we start with the anticipation and the dashboarding and the filter, so that's what we're going to talk about, I think, now. So that would be the system outside to try and identify an event, the piece that we're setting on somebody's countertop, and then the portable air filter, like the single room air filter system. Carson has I think a pretty robust design in place at this point, and we have, I think, all of the hardware for that. I think we always come across something when you're doing the final mile assembly piece, but those should be all minor pieces. Carson can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would guess kind of in maybe the 2-week-ish, maybe a little bit more time frame, we would be able to get what we've gotten so far is 5 sets of equipment, because we didn't want to buy everything and then find out we wanted to do a major pivot. So 5 seemed like a happy number to get enough out. So kind of in the 2-week model of getting 5 out into people's homes, I think is a pretty realistic timeline. Does that seem reasonable to you, Carson?
Yeah.
And we can put Tessa and Abby to help you with some assembly steps.
Yeah, right. I've built one, pretty much built one so far, but I haven't built one completely from scratch because the one I've built is just using stuff that I've been working on for a while to develop it. But yeah, I think with help, 2 weeks should be a good target. So.
Okay, and then what would it look like? Go ahead, sorry.
So getting into people's homes, I think maybe that's where you were going next. Carson has done, I think, a really good job on trying to make that piece as easy as possible, but this is going to be a real good testing ground for it. And again, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Carson. It should be fairly plug and play within everybody's home. So what that would mean is we'd give you, I think, 3 things: a box with a power plug for outside, which would be the outdoor anticipatory piece, a filter that you would plug straight into the wall, the standard 120, and a desktop piece that would plug in, like a countertop module piece that you plug straight into the wall. And the network should create, and all those things should start talking to each other within the home. So it should
Yeah.
be you show up to, I would say my office, but it's so full of junk right now, we'll find somewhere else. We find you with and we give you your kit of 3 things. You go to your home and plug in 1, 2, 3, and it fires up. One piece that we have not talked about yet is I don't think we're going to see a lot of big events right now. I'm guessing, we'll find out, but just looking at the load recently, there hasn't been a lot of the pollution spikes that perhaps be triggering this thing. So we may want to think about if we hard code in some additional options to force this thing to run, just so that we can test all of the aspects as opposed to just crossing our fingers that we're seeing events. Depending on where you are in town, you might see more with people's fireplaces and all that in downtown, but it's a bit of a tangent topic for a start. So 2 weeks, hopefully, and you come pick up your box of things and plug in would be the realistic path
So
forward.
is part of the test, like whether you can install it or whether you can make it work in your own home, like that initialization part is part of what you're looking for?
Yes, I think that would be a good thing to test. And Carson, we should think about what sort of diagnostics we want to maybe feedback there. I think in the real study, we would likely have our staff do that installation. I'm guessing, because they're going to be going out and doing other things as part of like the onboarding of homes and all of that. But this should be for the anticipatory, the countertop piece, and the fan. I have the utmost faith that everybody in this group would be able to achieve those steps within this piece, because it's no modification of anything beyond plugging something into a standard 120 outlet. So from an expediency standpoint, we may or may not need a dummy field team for this part of the beta testing.
Okay, and then what are you hoping? So this would be in somebody's house on their counter.
Yep.
You want them to interact with it? What are you guys looking for? And Erica and Pi, you can jump in here too. What will you be looking for? What is the test about?
Yeah, so maybe I'll do a first pass and then open it up to folks. One is I want to make sure that everything just keeps running. So we log data essentially continuously. So we should have a decent idea of if we're getting our data streams, if the logging is working, if the Wi-Fi is working, if the network is working, on all those things. If we're getting all basic functionality, just it's sitting anywhere. So I see that first as just the basic stress test. Let the hardware sit and run. That would give us that answer. Things don't crash. That's the first piece. I think it would be really good for us to be able to capture the user interface pieces. So I think maybe we talked about this in our kind of subgroup call with Erica and Carson and I, but I can't remember if I just thought about it or didn't, if we talked about it. I started putting together kind of a dummy script of what I think people's interactions would be. Like somebody might do this, which means they should have been pushing these buttons. And my plan was to send that script with people, ask you to do it, have you tell us when you did it, and then we can go back through the data logs and see if we can actually find it. This is like, go to screen 2, go to screen 3, turn fan on, turn fan off, all of those sort of things. The one that I am most worried about testing reliably is the autonomous triggering based on outdoor conditions. So we should think about how we want to do that. The only one I've come up so far that seems like a really reliable is people who maybe have predictable air pollution sources outside, your barbecue grill, or you have a neighbor with a smoker that fires up, or that sort of thing. we'll probably see some real world events, but I think we'll want to force the system to run at times we know it should have run. That's, I think, the one I have not fully wrapped my head around about how we want to do our beta testing. Let me stop there.
And Erica, what about you and Pi?
Yeah, I think aligned with what Christian said, definitely we're gonna rely on the data output of like they're on the screen, whatever, at this timestamp. So I think just making sure that it's logging like what those screens are accurately and we can clearly understand what buttons they've been pressing and how long they've been on it. And then also like when a pop-up like notification is triggered, just again making sure all those data streams are logged, I think is important. And then I guess the other part would just be, again, not necessarily novel to what Christian said, but you know, like they understand the workflow of the notification means this, and right, just do a brief, like a debrief with you know, ourselves afterwards using it and make sure it's an intuitive workflow from like a UX perspective.
And the surveys that you plan to deliver, is that not something that you wish to test in this?
Yeah, we definitely can. I think we're moving forward with not putting them like on the device, right? So there'll be like a paper survey or a QR code survey. But yeah, I think we definitely could do that if we're good with doing those with it.
Okay.
I think the thought was when we started to see those screens and some of the more detailed questions, that it didn't look very maybe user friendly to try and do these full surveys on the screen that we're actually going to be providing them.
Yeah, and I think with 16 homes and 5 surveys, like even if everyone did it on paper, that's not a painful transcription, so it won't be bad.
Okay, so that's one of the less important things to test.
I think, yeah, like how the surveys, I think don't need to be, but like we do have some questions like, what did this screen mean? And when you get this notification, how do you interpret that? And yeah, we definitely could do that through the survey or in like a informal debrief afterwards. That's what I imagine, just like asking them in a more interview context.
Okay. So, and then I am not sure that we need or want the diagnostic measurements, which are pressure differences across the wall, temperatures indoors and outdoors. And then we sometimes put a weather station outside. Christian, I don't think that's talking to your thing yet. And if it did, it would really probably be only for the pressurization. I'm not sure though. Would you benefit from having that information along with? And if so, I can talk a little bit about what it is like to have those instruments in your home.
Yeah, maybe I'll answer it in 2 ways. From a de-risking standpoint right now, we're developing the pressurization with a standalone pressure sensor. So from a functionality standpoint, I don't think we need that. I think where the value might come from is because you have so much data using your systems, and we have a lot of data to make us feel reasonably confident that ours works, but not in the home scenarios that you'll be in. So I would see your diagnostic, where the benefit would be is from a validation comparison research question standpoint, but not necessarily a critical path deal breaker type thing. I would say one of the things I want to do once we kind of build up the next round of these is I want to put a long-term one of our sensors running just at the powerhouse, because we have surprisingly weird differential pressure across the building. here, so maybe we actually get much of that same value.
Hmm.
We can talk about that offline, but I think it's the validation comparison as opposed to functionality.
Yeah.
It's so different.
So for other reasons, Misa and Danny are going to be running extra pressure measurements in my house. And I'm certainly willing to have the interface in there. And so that is also a potential validation um, uh, test bed or something. So for those of you who may be considering this, if the issue of putting the measurements in your house comes up, what the most invasive thing is drilling a 3/16 inch holes through your wall, which get patched later. Those are tiny. And then the pressure measurement devices are delta pressures. So Christian is apparently replicating that. But we're measuring across the wall, and those devices make some clicking noises. They click once a minute when they're measuring. That may be something that our field team works on suppressing that noise so it's not bothersome. Currently, we have not been putting them in people's bedrooms. And because, well, it would drive me crazy if I was trying to sleep. It does not bother me. These have been in my house for much longer than we have a measurement series. They're just kind of sitting there clicking, and I've gotten used to them, and I think you get used to them relatively quickly, but it is something to consider. The other measurements are really non-invasive. They're tiny little temperature measurements, and so they just sit there. They don't make any noise. I forget that sometimes I digging through something, I'm like, oh, what's that? And there, it's a temperature measurement device. And then if we did put a weather station outside, it would be visible and it would be on a post. So it it has an appearance effect on your house and nothing else. So just so you know, as we discuss those things. And then of course, the most invasive thing would be the home pressurization device. And I'm thinking that we're starting with just the air cleaner package. But as we gain familiarity with that, then we'll think about introducing those. And they require different kinds of homes too. So Paul, Christian, Jordan, you want to talk about what that would look like?
Or I can go first if you'd like, then can add on. I'm assuming we're talking about the pressurization system, not the standalone. So,
What's not the air cleaner. I think we've already
right,
covered
right,
that. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, for the pressurization system, um, you can think about if you have a forced air furnace, so it's got ducts and it's got supply registers and return grills. There would be something, kind of parallel to that. Think about some amount of length of 10-inch diameter duct that would probably be, it's most likely either in your basement or crawl space. We will, uh, and then, well, so you'll have duct going through your basement or crawl space for some length. The length will be determined based on the details of your house. There will be at least one, maybe more than one register through which the air gets supplied into the house. The determination of whether it's one or more than one would also depend on the configuration of your house. And, probably I would be out there and take a look and we would discuss what might be reasonable. So there could be potentially more than one place where air gets deposited. So air is going through the duct, going through a fan that is in the duct. So therefore the fan is in the basement or crawl space and we'll need to be able to get electricity to it. It'll go through the filter and then get dumped into the house in one or more locations. And those locations will have a register that if a typical supply register in a home that has a forced air furnace is about 4 inches by 12 inches if it's just a floor register. These might be bigger. If it's just a single point of being deposited, it would likely be bigger. It might be 12 inches by 12 inches instead of 4 inches by 12 inches because those 4 inch by 12 inch are only good for a certain amount of flow. And we would need more flow than that. So yeah, it would largely be in your basement or crawl space. We have to get air into the duct. So to get air into the duct, you can think about, you probably have a dryer vent on the outside of your house. So think about something that is kind of shaped like that, but larger. Also, one of the things with the dryer vent is it's going to have a little damper that opens a certain way. We need it to open the other way. So it's the details are different, but if you think about something that visually looks like a large dryer vent type of thing, that would be at the bottom of your house, going in through the wall into the basement or crawl space. And then the duct is attached to the other side of that and then is running through the foundation space until it dumps the air. I think there's something in the chat. You do not need to have a forced air system. I'm just using that as an explanation of what it might look like because it's not tying into the forced air system.
Okay, so Paul, I want to summarize this.
Yep.
So I think you're placing the fan, which needs electricity, in the basement or crawl space.
Yes.
There's something that looks like a dryer vent on the outside of the house.
Yep.
Where air is drawn into the fan.
Yep.
And then the air enters the house through something that looks like a supply grill.
Yep.
You do not have to have a central heating system because you're going to add those grills. And it could be a little bit larger.
Right.
Those are the changes to the house.
Yeah, well, and then the filters down in the basement or crawl space.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a long duct that may have branches, and there will be two other things in it. One is the fan, and one is the filter housing that the filter is located in.
Right. So I'm just trying to think of what people themselves would experience. Like if people don't go in their crawl spaces and they might go in their basements. And so the
Right.
things that they're going to see being the most different are that additional grill and perhaps the thing on the outside. And then there's going to be a lump of something with a duct in their basement, right?
Right. And if it is in a basement, there's wiring, there is all of that stuff. We would obviously, we would work with you to figure out where to put it so that you're not banging your head into it. It's out of your way. One other thing that is noticeable, it's not by sight, but there will likely be some sound because the fan is running, and
Okay.
there'll be historically, people tend to notice fan noises when there's a change in state, when it either comes on or goes off, then it fades into the background. So hopefully it wouldn't be a lot of those incidences, but probably every time it comes on or goes off, you'll notice the sound.
Right.
And
And that,
there can also be drafts, because this is not going to be conditioned air. That's the other thing. We're not putting a heating element in. So it's outdoor air coming through and being dumped into the house. And so there will be drafts, and that's another thing we would be working with you to figure out where we put it in a way that it is not, say, blowing cold air on something that can't get cold or being annoying to you.
okay. So I'm seeing for this that it would be good to develop some photos.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think Jordan was trying to show in the back of his camera there, but Jordan, let's take some photos and we'll circulate them afterwards.
That'd be best. Good resolution.
Yeah. And I think, Paul, you have some you have some visions of how things are gonna look, and maybe we can get some examples from those, from the hardware store and kind of mock them up in the house of pressure or something and
Yeah.
photograph them, because I think that'll be efficient. But so the main thing here is that this is a more substantial change to homes. We recognize, Will, that if you're a renter, you're not gonna be authorized to make these changes. And so, yeah, thanks, Carson. So I think if I could bucket
did-
this, we want to put interfaces in homes right now or in 2 weeks, as Christian said. And then we want to start thinking about where we can introduce this pressurization device. And that's it, maybe a different set of people, maybe some overlap or Venn diagram there.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's good to, because the pressurization system is gonna be really hard to run without Carson's pieces. I think it's a logical staggering. Paul, you and I can talk about this afterwards, but I wonder if it'd be worth us thinking about mocking up some portable or temporary systems that are like through window
hmm,
units. Those are not like full study pieces.
That could
but-
be, that could be if people are willing to have that like that in their house for a short period of time.
Yeah, even if we were just doing like, 1 day, 2 day tests, but
Yeah.
you and I can talk about that offline.
Yeah, that's plausible.
Just
Okay.
what Jordan's been doing has worked
Yep.
actually pretty well, is this little cart setup.
Yeah, okay.
One, Tammy, for you or I, or I guess whoever wants to be involved in the budget piece, we've stalled on some of the blower purchases because they're bigger price item pieces.
hmm,
And as with any projects, the budget we thought about 3 years ago may not have anything to do with what the study is or our budget is now. So I'll send over to you, I don't know if it'll be today or Monday, what I think kind of small volume, full study cost pieces, and you can just tag up before.
Yeah.
Because the blowers and the pieces Paul was talking about, not even including the installer pieces, are the bulk of the tech costs. Everything Carson's done is cheap compared to like
mhm.
the pressurization. So before I start
Okay.
spending cash in these strange times, I'll check in with you.
I will take a look at the budget when I get your budget. So maybe first thing, we're near the end of time, but quick show of hands, who's willing to have an interface and air cleaner in their home and be experimented on? Okay, Christian, are you noting? Keep your hands up. Christian can get all the names down. And then we'll work on who would be willing later as we develop maybe intermediate ways of getting the pressurization device, and then we'll start collecting names.
I had one real quick question. The thing that's gonna be about the size or bigger than a dryer vent, that's on the outside. Does it matter whether you have a brick home or a wood home?
Well, if it's a true all brick home, it would cost more to pay a contractor to cut a hole, and it probably is a little bit more to patch it at the end. So if we actually were installing it through true brick, given that I think we've made the decision that we will be removing them, the end, it would increase the cost to the project. It can
Okay.
otherwise be done, but it would
Right.
increase the cost of the project.
And
Okay, you might put a little asterisk by mine. We have a brick home. I think it's true brick, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm happy to consider that. It's just, it
Yeah,
might cost
good
more in the
point.
long run. It might not be worth it at this point.
Yeah,
So-
and there is also the possibility that we could run it through the attic instead.
Oh,
Or if you
okay.
or if you have an attached garage, we could conceivably run it
Oh,
through an
we do.
attached garage and through a wall. Um, So there are potentially other options. I haven't focused on those for other reasons, but those are things we can consider.
Okay, thanks. I just was curious. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think some of those intermediate, it's a great idea to try intermediate stuff that is easily undone.
Yeah.
When we were figuring out where to drill holes through people's homes, even those little ones, we were just not going through brick.
And this is a novel idea, but if they had a vented crawl space, we can just leave the unit in the crawl space or but like beneath the house, right? Have we heard that? Like we don't even need to drill a hole in the wall, right? Just stay
If they
underneath
have
it.
an unconditioned crawl space, yes.
Say that again.
Okay, we're gonna close. So these are great. These are things to explore, and maybe the tech team needs to gather and do all these intermediate scenarios. And Jordan, you'll be a key part of that discussion.
Cool.
Cool. Okay, adding brick to the questionnaire. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Take care.